Tune into a frequency where the signal-to-noise ratio favors the bizarre. In this collection, we broadcast stories from the edge of reason, tales that flicker between the real and the surreal. From parallel universes hiding in plain sight, memories that refuse to stay in the past, each video is a transmission from a world just out of reach. Adjust your antennas and prepare for static. You're about to enter a world where the only limit is your imagination. Gather round, dear listeners, for a tale that will send shivers down your spine. Tonight, we delve into the shadows of the human mind, where guilt and fear intertwine. This is the story of a man haunted not by ghosts, but by something far more terrifying, his own conscience. Our tale begins with John, a seemingly ordinary man with a dark secret. He lived a life that looked perfect from the outside, but inside he was drowning in guilt. You see, John had made mistakes. Terrible mistakes that had hurt those closest to him. One foggy evening, as John walked home from work, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A figure, tall and dark, standing motionless under a flickering streetlight. But this was no ordinary person. Where its face should have been, there was only emptiness. John blinked, and the figure vanished. He shook his head, blaming his tired mind for playing tricks on him. But deep down, he knew something had changed. Next day, John saw it again. This time, the faceless figure was across the street from his office, just watching. John's heart raced. He tried to convince himself it wasn't real, but the chill in his bones told him otherwise. Days passed, and the sightings continued. The figure appeared in crowds, in empty alleys, always silent, always watching, and always getting closer. John's life began to unravel. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. His coworkers noticed the change. "You okay, John?" they'd ask. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Only they knew the half of it. Desperate to escape, John packed a bag and fled town. He drove for hours, dark highway stretching endlessly before him. Finally exhausted, he checked into a small motel in the middle of nowhere. As he lay in bed that night, trying to calm his racing thoughts, John heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming closer to his door. His heart pounded as he watched the doorknob slowly turn. The door creaked open, and there it stood, faceless figure, now in his room. John pressed himself against the wall, trembling. "What do you want?" cried out. And then, something impossible happened. The figure spoke. "You know what I want," it said, its voice a hollow whisper. "I want you to face what you've done." In that moment, John understood. This entity wasn't some supernatural monster. It was the embodiment of his guilt, his shame, all the pain he'd caused others given form. Tears streamed down John's face as the weight of his actions crashed over him. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry for everything." As John spoke those words, something changed. The figure began to fade, becoming transparent, and as it disappeared, John felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Faceless killer was gone, but the lesson remained. Our past mistakes, our guilt, they can haunt us like ghosts. But facing them, owning up to what we've done, that's the only way truly banish them. John returned home the next day, a changed man. He reached out to those he'd hurt, made amends where he could. It wasn't easy, but with each step, felt lighter. And so, dear listeners, remember this tale when you feel the weight of guilt upon your shoulders. For the most terrifying monsters are not those that lurk in the shadows, but those we create within ourselves. The true horror lies not in facing our mistakes, but in running from them. For in the end, we cannot escape ourselves. Sleep well, and may your conscience be clear, for you never know when your own faceless killer might come calling. Welcome to a tale that will make you question the very darkness outside your window. Tonight, we delve into the mind of a man trapped not just by four walls, by his own spiraling fears. Dim the lights, draw the curtains, and prepare yourself for a journey into the black sky. Our story begins with Mark, a quiet man who lived alone in a small apartment on the top floor of an old building. Mark had always been a bit of a loner, but he'd never minded his solitude. That is, until the night the sky turned black. It started on a Tuesday evening. Mark was sitting at his desk, working late as usual, when he noticed something odd outside his window. The streetlights, usually visible from his perch high above the city, had vanished. Curious, he walked to the window and peered out. What he saw made his blood run cold. The sky was pitch black. Not the deep blue of night, but an inky, impenetrable darkness that seemed to swallow everything in sight. Mark blinked, rubbed his eyes, but the darkness remained. He could see nothing beyond his window. No buildings, no stars, not even the moon. Just blackness. At first, he tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just an unusually dark night. Maybe there was a power outage in the city. But as hours passed and the darkness didn't lift, a creeping sense of unease began to take hold. Mark found himself unable to look away from the window, his eyes straining to make out any shape in the void. And then he saw it. A flicker of movement in the blackness, like a ripple in a dark pond. His heart raced. Had he really seen something, or was his mind playing tricks on him? He backed away from the window, drawing the curtains tight. But even with the curtains closed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something out there was watching him. Days passed, and the darkness didn't lift. Mark's phone had no signal. His internet was down. He was completely cut off from the outside world. Food in his fridge began to run low, but he couldn't bring himself to leave his apartment. What if the darkness was waiting for him? As time wore on, Mark's paranoia grew. He began to see shapes in the shadows of his apartment, hear whispers in the silence. The darkness outside seemed to be seeping in, creeping under his door and through the cracks in his windows. One night, as Mark sat huddled in the corner of his living room, he heard a sound that made his blood freeze. A soft tapping at his window. Tap, tap, tap. With trembling legs, he approached the window. His hand shook as he reached for the curtain. Taking a deep breath, he yanked it open. Blackness pressed against the glass like a living thing. And there, in the midst of the void, was a face. Or rather, the suggestion of a face. 2 pinpricks of light where eyes should be, and a gaping maw of deeper darkness. Mark stumbled back, a scream caught in his throat. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. The window began to crack under the pressure of the darkness outside. In that moment, Mark had a choice to make. Face the unknown terror outside, or let it consume him from within. With a cry of defiance, he flung open the window. The darkness rushed in, enveloping him. But as it did, Mark felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He realized that the true darkness had been inside him all along. His fears, his isolation, his paranoia. As quickly as it had come, the blackness receded. Mark found himself standing at his open window, the city lights twinkling below, the night sky clear and star-filled above. He had faced his fears, and in doing so, banished the darkness. So remember, dear listeners, when the night seems darkest and your fears loom large, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open the window and let the light in. For often the monsters we fear most are the ones we create in our own minds. Sleep well, and may your skies always be clear. But if you do find yourself facing a black sky, remember Mark's tale. Sometimes the only way out of the darkness is through it. In the heart of every small town, there are whispers of places best left unexplored. Tonight, we journey to one such place, where childhood innocence collides with ancient evil. Settle in, dear listeners, for a tale that will make you think twice about venturing into the woods alone. Our story begins on a sweltering summer day in the quiet town of Millbrook. 3 friends, Sam, Lily, and Jake, decided to escape the heat by exploring the dense forest on the outskirts of town. The trio had been friends since kindergarten, and at 12 years old, they thought they knew every inch of those woods. But on this day, they were about to discover something that would change their lives forever. As they pushed deeper into the forest, trees grew thicker, blocking out the sun. The air became cooler, filled with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. "Hey guys," Sam called out, pointing ahead. "What's that?" In a small clearing stood an old stone well, its edges crumbling with age. Vines crawled up its sides, as if nature was trying to reclaim it. Lily approached cautiously. "I've never seen this before, have you?" Jake shook his head, a mix of excitement and unease in his eyes. "No, but let's check it out." As they drew closer, a strange sound drifted up from the well's depths. It was unlike anything they'd ever heard. A mix between a growl and a whisper, almost hungry. "Did you hear that?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Sam nodded. leaning closer to peer into the darkness below. "Hello?" he called down. The sound stopped abruptly. For a moment there was only silence. Then, without warning, a gust of wind erupted from the well, carrying with it a stench so foul it made the children gag. "We should go," Jake said, backing away. But as he turned, he found himself unable to move. It was as if invisible hands were holding him in place. Lily and Sam tried to run too, but they were also stuck. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped, being slowly pulled towards the well by an unseen force. "Help!" Lily screamed, her voice echoing through the trees, but no one was around to hear. The well seemed to come alive, the stones shifting and groaning. The vines began to move, reaching out towards the children like grasping fingers. Sam, the closest to the well, felt something brush against his ankle. He looked down to see a pale, slimy hand reaching up from the depths, its fingers curling around his leg. "No," he yelled, trying to kick it away. The grip was too strong. As Sam was pulled closer to the edge, Lily and Jake fought against the invisible force holding them. Tears streamed down their faces as they watched their friend being dragged into the darkness. Just as all seemed lost, a bright light burst through the trees. The hand retreated, and the force holding the children vanished. They ran, stumbling and crying, not daring to look back. They didn't stop until they reached the edge of the forest, collapsing onto the sun-warmed grass of a nearby field. As their breathing slowed, they looked at each other, unable to believe what had just happened. They made a pact, right then and there, to never speak of the well again, to never return to that part of the woods. But as they walked home, each child knew that the memory of what lurked in that well would haunt their dreams for years to come. And so, dear listeners, remember this tale the next time you venture into the woods. Not all wells contain water, and some thirsts can never be quenched. In the quiet corners of the world, ancient evils still lurk, waiting for curious souls to stumble upon them. So be careful where you tread, and always listen to the whispers of warning on the wind, for you never know when you might find yourself at the edge of a well that has no bottom and no mercy. Sleep tight, and may your dreams be free of dark waters and grasping hands from below. We hope you enjoyed this chilling tale. If it sent shivers down your spine, give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part? Don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky, and remember, sometimes the darkest shadows hide the most terrifying secret.